All right. So Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back after New Year's and Christmas. I hope you had a blissful festival time. So now we're going to be starting chapter 13. And this is about the nature, the enjoyer, and the consciousness. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll start, Prabhuji.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No problem. So the summary of chapter 13. So we've gotten to a very interesting point. After, in total 18 chapters. So after chapter 12, we have 6 more chapters left. And the final 6 chapters, they focus on jnana, or they focus on knowledge. They focus on the transcendental wisdom, which helps us, become detached from materialistic aspirations. But also, we simultaneously attach to Krishna. So chapter 13 covers topics which have been previously discussed, but it sort of analyzes them more and it goes deeper into them. So thus, wise readers can take advantage of the logical presentation made by Krishna to strengthen their conviction and deepen their understanding. So Krishna not only, gives his philosophy, but he presents it in a logical way, which can actually strengthen our faith. And if anyone was to ever, question our faith, or we were to ever be tested, we can present these logical arguments, made by the Supreme himself, so that we can defend and we can sort of make the other person understand where we're coming from and give them a logical argument. Because in this world where, of course, science and a lot of rational things are looked at, we must be able to also not only, be a follower, not only follow blindly, but also we have to be able to present it logically to other people so that we can inspire them to also follow. So the themes are the 6 subjects, and those are Prakriti, which is the nature or the material world, Purusha, who's the enjoyer, i.e. Krishna, Kshetra, which is the field of activities, the body is the Kshetra, the Kshetrajna, which is the knower of the field, so the one that essentially controls the body, which is the soul, and then Jnanam, which is a process of knowing or gaining knowledge, and then Nayam, which is the object of knowledge. So Krishna describes what knowledge is, and then he describes the nature of the soul, so how, we should be, who we actually are. And then he also describes the material nature and the soul's sort of intentions and their interaction. Thank you. So can we have a reader to please start us off?
Ishwari Kishori have raised their hand, of course.
Text 1 to 2. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." Text 3. O Sion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. Text 4. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity, and how it is constituted, and what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. Text 5. That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra, with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Texts 6 to 7. The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered, in summary, to be the field of activities and its interactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shuri. Oh, if that was Kishori, I'm not too sure. But thank you for reading regardless. It was very sweet. So the summary of verses 1 to 7. Now, although, Arjuna is sort of an established transcendentalist, which means, he's quite knowledgeable in the Gyan, he plays a part of like a materially entangled individual. So, when many people give the example of the Gita, they talk about Arjuna being in a dilemma. In fact, it's not Arjuna in a dilemma. Arjuna is a very, very exalted personality, very exalted. And he is he plays a part of a very special rasa, the friendship rasa with Krishna. So he is not a materially entangled individual. Rather, he plays the part, sort of like a drama. If you've ever been to a play, those characters aren't actually those characters. Rather, they play that part. So that's exactly what Arjuna did as well. He played that part to pose as that for our benefit. Whenever we go watch, something in a theater, or we go watch a play, the message that we get is what we take in. So similarly, these personalities, they pose themselves in a certain way so that we can be benefited, right? Humanity can be benefited. So Arjuna asks Krishna to define the 6 subjects, which we went through. So Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnanam, and Gnayam. And these subjects are the key they constitute Vedic philosophy, and Krishna therefore spends the entire chapter defining and discussing them. So right now it was only, 1 to 7 verses, but later on, the next verses, he'll start to define and discuss them. So his astute inquiries create the opportunity for Krishna to offer answers to life's most profound mysteries. So when they start to discuss, you'll see that the way Arjuna asks these questions are very systematic. If someone was actually entangled, their questions and their emotions would be all over the place. But Arjuna asks very deep questions, and one after the other, which he gives the opportunity to Krishna to answer them. So it's a very sort of laid out, it's a very systematic, philosophy, and it's very beautifully laid out in a sense. So Krishna begins by defining Kshetra and the Kshetrajna. And then the lesson, of course, lesson 52, we learn is that the various constitutions of our body are there so that we can understand how to control our desires and focus our attention. When we learn about different, things that make up our body and what we are capable of, it allows us to understand that we have a higher purpose. And we not only one purpose, of course, we have multiple purposes, but all these things that we have are not just to eat, sleep, mate, defend, right? We have a higher purpose.
And
sorry, Prabhuji, continue.
This just gives a little bit of analysis of the constitution of our body, as you said very nicely. Great explanation, actually. But just very quickly, our gross body is made up of these 5 gross elements: mirth, water, fire, and then the sense objects are form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and then we have 5 knowledge-acquiring senses and 5 working senses. The knowledge-acquiring senses are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. And the working senses are hands, legs, voice, anus, genitals. And then that's 15. The 16th is the mind. 17th is intelligence. 18th is our ego. And the 19th is this unmanifested. This is a little hard to understand, but we don't really need to go into this in any particular detail at this stage. But this basically constitutes our body. So it's good to understand what our body is basically made up of. And we are none of these things, by the way. So, okay.
So anyone else want to read? Lokeshwar or Kishore Prabhu? Anyone?
Yeah, I can read.
Thank you,
You can
Lokeshwar.
read, yeah.
Okay, text 8 to 12. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and physical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Okay, thank you.
So, thank you, Lokeshwar. I know that was quite a bit to read. So, summary of verses 8 to 12. These verses describe how the Kshetrajna, or the spirit soul, can disentangle himself from the Kshetra by cultivating jnana. So, they're all basically interlinked. That's what you'll realize. And by getting knowledge or by receiving jnana, we can sort of separate our soul and do things for the soul, and then we can separate the body and do things for the body. Of course, one is, in a sense, more important than the other. The soul is more important than the body, but we need to keep our body healthy to, do certain things. So, since true knowledge is revealed within the heart of a deserving person, the real method of acquiring knowledge is the cultivation of divine qualities, of which humility is foremost. So, Krishna now says, also you'll notice when Ishwari and Kishori were reading at the start, you'll notice how Krishna said, this is most important in my opinion. Now it's very funny how the Lord says in my opinion, because everything in his opinion is true. But when you analyze the relationship of Arjuna and Krishna, it's a friendship. And in friendship, obviously, of course, both have opinions. But here, Arjuna is starting to realize, he has already, in a way realized that Krishna is the supreme. So, just a thought basically that Krishna treats his devotees like just how they are. It's like a very reciprocated thing. He doesn't force anything on them, but he says rather, in my opinion, I'll give you some advice. It's up to you if you want to follow. So he also says that humility is foremost. Someone who is humble is able to acquire knowledge and is able to cultivate, divine qualities in them. So knowledge is not about, information and memorization. That's material knowledge. If you look at it, you'll realize that that's what we do in school, right? We have to go through content of knowledge. We have to memorize it. Then we have to give an exam on it. So that's material knowledge. But real knowledge that Krishna is talking about here is divya jnana, which is, divine knowledge. He talks about the exemplary personal character and practical behavior. What that means is he's talking about the nature of the soul, and then he's talking about also, himself, the supreme. So that is divine knowledge. That is what gives us those divine qualities and the disentanglement. So one who nurtures a saintly disposition experiences a change of heart which disentangles the eternal soul from its deep-rooted identification with the body. So someone who presents their saintly sort of character, of course, it's not about the external presentation, but it's so almost like a fake it till you make it thing. Once you start to present these qualities, your mentality itself changes, because changing the mind is very, very hard. So that's why you change it with your actions first. So your whatever bodily needs you need to do, you change your habits, your actions, your attitude, and then that's how your mind changes. And then that, of course, naturally causes a change of heart. So, and then it, leads to that disentanglement, that detachment of the soul and the body. So like it says very nicely, the body is a temporary dress. Of course, we're not going to be wearing the same dress all the time. That would, not be very hygienic, first of all, but also it's not practical. We are not made to wear the same, because the nature of the soul is to be free, right? At the moment, we're really trapped inside this body. Our body has a lot of limitations. It's a very bad quality body. We get ill so easily. We have a lot of illnesses. We can catch diseases, death, old age, birth itself. So it's a very temporary dress. And so lesson 53 is that we cultivate the quality of humility. And how we do that is, again, thank you, Prabhu. So what it is, first of all, is that humility is often mistaken to be some sort of meekness in behavior. You'll realize if someone was to, show them to be very humble, people would consider him or her to be a very weak or sort of a meek person. But in Vaishnavas, humility is a spiritual quality, and it's the topmost quality. It comes from understanding one's real self in relationship with God. When you take a step back and look at how big everything is, you'll realize how insignificant yourself you really are. And that's what happens all the time. Sometimes, even if we get a little bit of praise, or a little bit of, someone said something good about us, we get too puffed up. Our ego goes from here to all the way here, because that's just the nature of our ego. That's what it wants to do. It wants to keep growing all the time. But we need to realize that when we take a step back in this whole universe, we are so insignificant, so insignificant. And that's what humility is. We need to realize that we're very small in everything that God has created. We're a very small being. So real humility is understanding that one is but an instrument or ordered servant of the Supreme Lord. And that's exactly what that means. Arjuna as well, he realized that when he saw the Virat Roop of Krishna, he saw, all the soldiers and Duryodhana and, his brothers, his warriors on his side, his army, his whole army was being eaten away by Krishna. Like it was like thousands of mouths, and their heads were being crushed within his mouth. And obviously at that time, the real war hadn't even started. Arjuna hadn't even started fighting there. So Krishna said to Arjuna that you are merely an instrument of what's going to happen. I've already killed them. They are literally already killed. Like you can see their mouths, their heads inside my mouth. They're already done. That's decided for sure. But you have to act as an instrument. You are an ordered servant of me to, complete this task. Because either way, they'll die. If you want to be an instrument in it, you do that. And of course, according to his Kshatriya Dharma, he had to do that. So real humility is the understanding that, I don't have any good qualities whatsoever. And on my own strength, I cannot accomplish anything independently. So I know that if I was to read these, these 5 bullet points a long time ago, I'd be like, what? Who is this undermining themselves so much? Why would you do this? But it's true. Our good qualities come from Krishna. Our strengths and our independency comes from Krishna. We, we are no special significance, like I said, in this vast creation. My only qualification is the order of my spiritual master and Krishna. That is also very important, because our spiritual master, hopefully when I get one, is going to be, sort of my instructor through Krishna. And that will be my qualification. The fact that I have to follow his instructions, like Nabi Prabhu right now is my Shiksha Guru, but spiritual master is like our Diksha Guru, the one that gives us initiation. So our only qualification is to follow their orders. And then by their potency, I may be empowered to do anything as they wish. So that is real humility. That is real humility. Humility isn't, oh no, thank you very much. I'm not this, I'm not that. No, those are just words that we say. But this is real humility, when we actually realize what our purpose is and what our nature is, what we have to do. Now, Srila Prabhupada is the epitome of humility. He was someone that was very, very humble. And that's the only reason he could create so many of his disciples that are, now gurus. So he defines humility as not hankering for the satisfaction of being honored by others. So Srila, what he's essentially saying is that you're not satisfied by being honored by others. You're satisfied by doing what you have to do. Just by being honored by others doesn't mean you've gotten that satisfaction. That's not humility. So thus a Vaishnav does not endeavor to prove his or her worth to others or to themselves. They simply endeavor to serve and please Krishna. So again, it's not to undermine yourself, but you just do what you have to do. You just do what you have to do. You follow instructions and that's it. That's humility. It's very simple, I know, very simple to say, but just to prove to someone else that you're humble, or to prove to yourself you're humble, is not humility. So in the mood of real humility, one can act very boldly and confidently. So humility is the start of many other qualities. Humility being the foundation. If someone is foundationally humble and they have humility, they're able to develop so many other qualities. They're able to develop respect, confidence, determination. So many of our important qualities that we know one should have, they start to develop at the foundation of being humble. So a Vaishnava is very meek and very tolerant, but when Krishna's service demands, a humble Vaishnav will do the needful in order to complete that mood of service. So when there is demand from a great personality, then that Vaishnav acts to do the needful. In mundane humility, the focus is on one's own inadequacies rather than upon Krishna's mercy. So that's perfect. It basically summed up what I said. The long explanation I gave, I should have just said that line. In mundane humility, everyone just says, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. But real humility is you depend on Krishna. You say, Krishna has given me all of this. That's his mercy. So I am in the center, not Krishna. That is a crucial sort of distinction. So that's mundane. I'm in the center, but that's okay. No, Krishna is in the center. I'm just acting on the side. That's humility.
Brilliant. Good explanation. I like it. And one thing which I've come to sort of understand over a period of time is God himself, Krishna himself, is very humble. When he comes to this world, he doesn't wear a t-shirt, I am God, worship me. He hides himself, and he didn't like to show off. Only in the Bhagavad Gita really he explains his position. Otherwise, he doesn't really explain it. So he's himself very humble, and because he's humble, when he sees others humble, in the context that you've just said, humility, he becomes very pleased because he himself is humble. So when he sees that quality in his devotees, that pleases him so much. So humility is so important, but making sure it's not a humility which is selfish humility. Very good. Well explained. Huh? Thank you.
Kishore Prabhu, I know you wanted to read, so you can read from text 13. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay. Text 13. I shall now explain the knowledge, knowing which you will test the eternal, Brahman, the spirit, the beginless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Text 14. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and face, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. Text 15. Super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is maintainer of all living being. He transcends the modes of the nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all modes of material nature. Text 16. Supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and non-moving, because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Text 17. Although the super soul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Text 18. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is object of knowledge, and he is a goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Text 19. Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this throughout and thus attend to my nature.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So, verses 13 to 19. Having described the kshetra and the kshetrajna and the jnanam, Krishna now describes gnayam, which is the object of knowledge. So the purpose of knowledge is to realize the soul and the super soul. Eternally, they're of course individual, but they're very intimately connected as well. And that's the beauty of Krishna's creations. They're all so complicated. Everything is so complicated that simply we just can't understand. Science can't understand. So it's hard to explain. Like, it's individual, but it's connected at the same time. That's all I can say. So it's the prerogative of the soul to understand the super soul, but the super soul is sometimes described as the avignayam, or unknowable. Again, very complicated. So it's sort of is built in us to understand, us as in the soul, to understand the super soul. But the super soul is also described to be unknowable. So how do we sort of reconcile this? Empirical researchers who try to fathom the supreme using mundane logic and material sense perception are invariably baffled. So exactly like I said, mundane logic refers to, worldly sciences, right? They all come up with theories, and then they say, oh no, wait, forget that theory, there's a new one. And then 2-3 years later, they say, oh no, wait, forget that one, there's a new one. But that's not how it works, right? In our scriptures, it just is what it is, and that's never going to change. But in science, they're like, oh no, every 5 years, oh wait, forget that one, we have a new one. Or they develop the theory, and then they ultimately reach the conclusion which has been in our Vedas and our Puranas for thousands and thousands of years. So when you try to fathom this vast creation and then even the vast creator with mundane logic, you will become baffled because it doesn't fit in what we've been taught. It doesn't fit, and it will never fit, because we've been taught very materialistically. So the super soul will remain, unknowable to them, because they're not trying to understand with an open mind. They're trying to use logic and rationality, and it just doesn't work. You can't confine the super soul in a box. It's not an object, right? So, however, those who approach the subject matter with the proper attitude, which is, again, being quite submissive and humble and willing to gain, insight through very great gurus and, other personalities, can surely realize the super soul. So, yes, it's described to be unknowable, but if you're in bhakti and you have teachers, qualified teachers or bona fide teachers, then you will be able to realize the super soul. So lesson 54 is about understanding the difference between the soul and the super soul. And these are the differences. So, two knowers and the differences. Now, the soul, we've already discussed in chapter 2, right? It's a part and parcel of Krishna. So these are the living entities known as Sanskrit. They're called Jivatma. And they're very, 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 very small. They're the size of 1 out of 10,000, the size of a tip of a hair. So if you slice the tip of a hair into 10,000 pieces, only one of that is how small the soul is. That's the size. They're also cognizant of one's own body. So they're quite different from the body. And the soul is a secondary proprietor for one's body. For example, a citizen, they're the proprietor of one land. So the soul can only control one body. My soul cannot control my friend's body, right? That's not how it works. It's only going to be able to control my body. And then it's very fallible as well. It's a loving servitor. That's very important. It's a loving servitor. That's the nature. If we were to describe the soul in terms of nature, it's a loving servitor. We are made to serve as a soul. And then innumerable living entities. We are multiplied. Everywhere you see a person, an animal, a plant, a living being has a soul. So there's innumerable amounts. And then there's a super soul, which is also in us. And the super soul is connected to God. It's God as a maintainer, and that is known as Paramatma. So Jiv Atma, which is a living entity, and then Param Atma, so which is like the first entity. And then there's infinite as well. So like we are divided into pieces, this is just infinite. There's no way to count it or cut it into 10,000 pieces. No, we can't do that. It's just infinite. It's Vibhu. It's also cognizant of everyone and everything. So it's a supernova. So it can direct, it can be the morality of multiple bodies, whereas a soul can't do that. The super soul is the supreme proprietor of all the bodies. For example, the analogy, like we said, a citizen can only own one land or a piece of land. So the king owns the whole multiple land. So the king is a proprietor of all lands, just as the super soul is a proprietor of all the bodies. And then also the Supreme Lord is the supreme controller of senses, right? Also known as Rishikesha. So the analogy is that the king is the original controller of all activities. So like we control it secondarily, but the super soul controls it in first. They have the first controller. And then it's infallible. It's an eternally loving master. So again, the nature of the super soul is to be God, of course, is an eternally loving master. So like we are subordinate, the super soul is superior. Through the super soul in the heart of every living entity, there is only one super soul. So even though it is in sort of every living being, so like I said, so many thousands of souls, right? Thousands of bodies, but there is one super soul, and it's in the heart of every living entity. So that's how complicated it is. Again, like even I can't even I can't fathom it right now. So I'm just trying to explain, but Prabhuji, maybe he can guide us on how to explain it better.
No, it was good. It's good. You understood it well. A huge difference between the two, and you've explained it well. And this chart is actually useful as well. So thank
Yeah,
you.
very helpful.
Yeah, well
Very
done.
helpful.
Well done.
Thank you. So can we have another reader?
This is the last part now.
Last one, yeah.
Lokeshwa.
Text 20. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. The transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Text 21. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Text 22. The living entity in this material world thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with the material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Text 23. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, and the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. Text 24. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Text 25. Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working with afflictive desires. Text 26. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Text 27. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Text 28. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who can understand that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible bodies ever destroyed, actually sees. Text 29. The one who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Text 30. One who can see that all the activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Text 31. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Text 32. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. Text 34. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Text 34. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Text 35. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Lokeshwar. So the summary of verses 20 to 35, as you very beautifully read. So the chapter concludes with descriptions of the final two terms, Prakriti and Purusha. Very important terms, right? So, like we said, Prakriti is material nature, and Purusha is the real enjoyer, which is Krishna. Now, the conditioned soul desires to control and enjoy matter. And that is the conditioned soul. When we condition something, we influence it to believe it from something that is, the truth. We sort of drive it away from the truth. So a conditioned soul does not realize its actual nature and its actual purpose. And then, a conditioned soul starts to think that, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to enjoy this. Whereas, and also tries to control everything. Whereas, that's not the nature of the soul. And it is this enjoying spirit that binds him to the material world. So when we try to enjoy something and we don't get it, and then, we start to throw tantrums and get angry and do this and that, we start to get bound by the material world. Because if you want something and you don't get it, your constant endeavor to get it will bind you to that thing, and it creates attachment to that thing. So the super soul, however, is the actual enjoyer, which is a Purusha. And everything, which it could either be, material nature or individual souls, they are ultimately meant for his enjoyment. So like you'll see, all of Krishna's paraphernalia, it could be his flute, his dress, his jewelry, all of those things, we decorate him so that they can come to his enjoyment, so that, of course, he's already beautiful. But when we decorate Krishna, those things are put in his service, and that gives him enjoyment. And otherwise, when we sing kirtan, or when we dance for Krishna, or when we act for Krishna, when we glorify Krishna, he enjoys that through us. So in that sense, us as souls also, cater for his enjoyment, because that is our nature. We're subservient. That's just how it is. So those things, us, as individual souls, are meant for his enjoyment. The gopis, the gopas, the cows, the monkeys, the Vrindavan Vasis, everyone was a part of his enjoyment, and that's why they were liberated, because they knew how to act for him. Just as pouring water over the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, and twigs, similarly, offering worship and service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pleasure and satisfaction automatically brings satisfaction to all living entities. So if you look at a tree, and the main thing is at the root, right? That's the source from where other parts or other aspects of the tree can also grow. If someone was to just water the leaves, wouldn't really grow. Someone was to just water the branch, wouldn't work either. So when you water the roots, that's where the roots absorb the water from, and then everything grows. Everything is satisfied. Similarly, when we water the source, or when we help to sort of help Krishna enjoy, when we serve him with our own ocean of devotion and love, and give it to him, because he's the root, he's the source, right? He's a Vedanta Sutra, which is sort of the source of the Vedas. So when we water him with our love and our devotion, automatically everything is satisfied, all living entities, including ourselves. So, lesson 55, by practicing bhakti, we try to elevate our consciousness, and then we put that consciousness into the service of the Lord. This picture we've seen that before. So, the horses and everything, the soul's just taking a back seat, and lower levels of consciousness as well. This is a if you have the Bhagavad Gita as it is, let me just show you quickly. This book right here, without any other mental speculation, it's a very good book, has purpose, translations, everything. So in this picture is in this book. And if you see, so the first pictures, of a woman on a magazine. She's not fully covered. So she's posing as well. She's sort of modeling, it seems like. And then she becomes a tree in her next life. And that's because trees don't have to cover themselves. They pose in a certain way, they don't really care. So she becomes a tree. So that was her consciousness. And then, a bear, that woman becomes a bear because she's always sleeping, lazy, the way bears hibernate. So she becomes a bear. And then we have a tiger because that man clearly is eating meat, chopping up meat, and then he becomes a tiger. And then a pig because he's living in his own filth. If you see, that area doesn't look quite nice, so he becomes a pig in his next life. So these levels of our consciousness determines what we're going to be in the next life, and we've already looked at that, right? So that's why it's important to keep our consciousness in a good area or onto Krishna.
And bhakti brings it to higher levels of consciousness. Really good. Well explained.
Thank you.
Questions? Wow, time is flying by.
Time has flown.
Any questions? Ishwari, Kishori, go for it.
What did it mean when it said free from the entanglement with the wife and children and home? What sort of entanglement does that mean?
Okay, so when someone, if you've ever seen, have you ever observed a monk, or like if you've ever gone to like a brahmachari, like a monastery or something? If you observed brahmacharis, they stay quite free, right? Because they're not allowed to marry, so they haven't got anything to look after. But when we become grihasthas, or when we have a family, we tend to take care of them so much that we forget what our other duty is. So we forget our sanatan dharma. So sometimes when someone gets a family, they get a wife, they get children, they tend to always focus on that. How will my kids, do in their exams? Will they get that job? Will they be able to provide for themselves? And then, will my wife, if she's unhealthy, when will she be okay? So sometimes family becomes a way to hold someone back. However, that is only in the material sense. If someone is quite spiritual, they'll be able to understand that their family is, a blessing, and they'll have to take care of them spiritually as well. As a spiritual person, you'll find the way to accept everything. So if your kids aren't doing great, well, you accept it, but you help them. So it's necessarily an entanglement in the wrong ways. If someone is quite material, then you get entangled. But if you're spiritual, you're fine.
Too much attachment. This is my son, this is my daughter, but actually they're not ours. They're in our care at the moment. They actually belong to Krishna. And if we understand that is our relationship with our children and whoever else, then that no longer becomes an entanglement, because the attachment is to the Lord, and understanding that whoever is in my company is actually belonging to the Lord, and I will treat them in that way. Does that make sense, Ishwari?
Yes, so we have to remember we're a servant of the Lord, and everything we have is because of the Lord.
Brilliant.
Essentially. You answered your own question there.
Okay, I was just trying to sum it up so I understand. Would it help promote good qualities in you if you spent more time in the temple and around devotees?
Yes, association is very, very important. You yourself develop good qualities that way, and then you also help others, because you can't give someone something you don't have, right? So once you are in good association and you're in the temple, of course we all know that if you've ever been to a good temple, those that atmosphere is just different.
Mm.
That atmosphere is very divine. So when you gather that association, when you gather those qualities, and then you give someone your association, then yes, you can pass on those good qualities to them as well, Krishna willing.
Thank you. Why is the soul so small?
It's only the material world. It's only in the material world the soul becomes tiny. When eventually we regain our spiritual position in the spiritual world, we will regain our original spiritual body, which whatever it was, like a Gopar or Gopi or a servant of Vishnu. So we'll regain that original situation. The soul isn't always tiny. Only in this material world, it becomes very, very tiny.
Yeah, I was gonna say our limbs occupy too much space, but Prabhuji answered it better.
And last question. When people have a near-death experience, how can they see outside their material body? Why does that happen?
So when we die, of course, our soul is, our soul is a divine thing, right? Our soul is given to us by Krishna. So when we're almost having a near-death experience and the soul is about to leave, our subtle body and not our subtle, but our spiritual body comes out and is able to kind of see everything in a spiritual sense. So I think that's the reason. I'm just guessing, but
No,
maybe
that's correct. That's correct. The soul comes out temporarily, and because it's a near-death experience, it goes back into the body. But while it's out, it sees, oh, that's my body, it was funny. One day when I went to a school, I was explaining near-death experiences to the children. And afterwards, one of the teachers came to me and said, my daughter had an operation. And afterwards, she told me she saw what the doctors were doing. She saw and she heard what they were talking about. And I was saying to her, oh, this is nonsense, shut up. And then, she said, when I heard what you've said just now, I can now relate it back to what she was saying to me, that she came out of the body and observed and then went back into the body because it wasn't the right time for her to leave yet. So that's near-death experiences where the soul can experience from outside of the body. So it shows how one is detached actually from the body. One is a soul.
I see. Thank you.
Brilliant questions. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Otherwise, let's. You've got a quiz, Kishori.
Yes, Prabhuji, we have.
Oh wow. Okay. So unless there's no other questions, you can share. You can share the your screen and the code and all that, so everybody can join.
Prabhuji, it doesn't look like you're in London.
Oh yeah, Tenerife.
Goodness me.
Nice.
I was going to say, since when does London have so much sun? There's no way.
Yeah, I thought I've got 50 schools in the spring term. So I thought before I start the schools, I get some warmth and energy in me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm doing the temple accounts and the annual report like you've very nicely contributed. So quite busy actually, but it's good. It's really nice.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So unfortunately, I won't be able to do the quiz, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining and giving your time again in one of the first days of the year. So have a great rest of the year, I guess. Happy 2023. And Hare Krishna. Bye, Shri.
Thank you so much, buddy. Very good.
Thank you, Bari.
Bye, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So everybody there? Not yet. Charu, Lokeshwar, Varad, Kishore. Anybody else to join? Are we waiting for anybody? Okay, I think you can start.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
What is the name of chapter 12? The opulences of the Lord, the abode of the Lord, devotional service, or Kali Yuga? And the correct answer is devotional service. What are some of the themes of chapter 12? Arjuna asks the Lord which is better to worship, his personal form or his impersonal form. Lord Krishna explains how breakdancing is the best form of worship. Arjuna asks whether it is his duty as a Kshatriya which compels him to spill the blood of his elders. Krishna explains the various options as to how to reach the highest platform.
Multiple choice.
Yes, multiple choice.
Very good. Good question. Very good question.
And the correct answer is the first and the fourth option. True or false? Lord Krishna mentions that devotees who are dear to him are equal in both happiness and distress. And the correct answer is true. True or false? Worshipping the impersonal form of the Lord is very difficult. And the correct answer is true. What are not some of the qualities that makes one dear to Krishna? Kindness, purity, anger, equality with both friends and enemies, jealousy. This is a multi-select. And the correct answer is anger and jealousy. True or false? Lord Krishna is very patient and is waiting for us to come back to him. And the correct answer is true. You should try to treat both friends and blank the same. This is a fill in the blank. And the correct answer is enemies. True or false? We should definitely worship the Lord's impersonal form. And the correct answer is false. What are some of the qualities that makes one very dear to Lord Krishna? Non-enviousness and kindness, freedom from lamentation and freedom from anxiety, eating sweets and sleeping, freedom to break dance all day and work out, no self-respect and enviousness. This is a multi-select. And the correct answer is non-enviousness and kindness, and the second option. True or false? For a relationship to exist, there must be a subject, object, and reciprocity. And the correct answer is true. In third place, we have Varad. In second place, we have Kishore. And in first place, we have Lokeshwar.
Well done, everybody. Did very well, actually. I didn't see too many wrong answers. So congratulations to everybody. Thank you for joining and look forward to seeing everybody next Sunday. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Oh,
Prabhuji.
Kishori, well done. Wonderful quiz. Really good. Well done.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Bye.
you. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.